Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and as we're now in the middle of summer, I thought I would take a look at possibly the most solar-powered transformer, the G1 Autobot Desert Warrior Snarl. Snarl, of course, is one of the Dinobots. He was first released in 1985. He would also be available in 1986. He would be discontinued in 1987, and we did not really get a replacement for him. However, Snarl would return to the line in 1990 as an Action Master. Now, for those of you who remember the Generation 1 Transformer cartoon, Snarl, like the other Dinobots, was created by Wheeljack. Snarl would be one of the later ones created due to the trouble that Grimlock, Slag, and Sludge presented to them. It would only be later, when the three Dinobots would be briefly turned against them, that Wheeljack would create Snarl and Swoop, making them somewhat smarter than some of their compatriots in order to make them easier to control. Or so they say. Out of the 5 Dinobots that were released, Snarl seems to be the one that's the least appreciated among all of them, especially in the collector's market, as he's one of the easier of the Dinobots to obtain. Plus, there's also the more obvious notice of the lack of inclusion of Snarl in the 1986 Transformers the movie, whereas all of the other Dinobots were heavily present. Snarl was not seen at all, and no explanation was really given as to why he was absent from the events of the movie. Now let's take a look at Snarl's articulation. And he has about what one would expect. You can rotate his arm at the shoulder. It does ratchet here pretty good. Now, if the tail isn't in the way, he can reach back a little bit further, but it does prevent him from going all the way around. So as you can imagine, he can also look down, point it downward a bit, but again, the legs and the tail will interfere with the movement. The joint in his hip that's more for transforming him does allow him to turn at the hip. So that's a little bit better than most of his Dinobot buddies. And he does have a proper joint at the knee. But again, that's used more for transforming him than actual posing. Because the method the means they use to transform Snarl here does make him a little wobbly with age. So be prepared for a little bit of a challenge if you find a loose Snarl to transform him. I'd also like to point out that Snarl's also one of the few of the Dinobots that can hold all of his weaponry. So he can hold his rifle in one hand, the sword in the other, and his missile pod can be connected to his shoulders. So it's a lot like he's a lot like Slag in this instance. Moving on right now, let's transform Snarl. We'll start by very gently removing his accessories. So I will warn you here, folks. This sample of Snarl is very, very loose on the joints and in the areas that are needed to shift to transform. So we will have a little bit of difficulty with him. Just bear with me and we will get through it. See right there, he likes to lean back and topple over. Come on, buddy. Stay up there. Stay with us. Alrighty. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we kind of press the legs together a little bit and we're going to raise his body up from the hips. The next step is to then rotate him at the hip all the way around, just like that. Now, we're going to take the back scales, as they refer to them, just fold them out a bit, and then we rotate his head back inside. Just push it down gently, and then you'll bring the scales up and over and cover completely. Stay here for a second, buddy. Stay. No, it's not the finger I should be giving him. And then next, we're going to take both halves of his tail and then fold them back, snap them together. They should connect pretty easily, in theory. Alright. His arms, we're going to rotate backwards a bit. Get them pointed straight down. So that way we can push the fists in and then fold these covers down over to form the rear legs. As you can see, the catch on this one no longer works after 30 plus years of playwear, so something you will have to watch out for when you buy a loose one, my friends, if that sort of thing bothers you. Alright, the next step is you're going to rotate the legs up. You have to pull it out slightly due to this protrusion here on the hips. So you just bring it up, pull it out very slightly, continue in until it locks into place. Just like that. The same thing here with the other leg. Pull it out a little and snap. Then you're going to take the dinosaur head, snap both halves together. And now these little front legs, you just got to pull them out very gently and then rotate them downward. Get the head to reset together. And then lastly, slide the body halves together. And then you can adjust the legs as need be. But then, there you have it. Snarl becomes a Stegosaurus. Now, while it's interesting on how his mode is done, I am a little bit disappointed in it. Mainly due to the fact that it's more obvious that he's a mechanical dinosaur. I mean, yeah, granted, all of them have the mechanical look, but you got a lot of exposed circuits and servos here in this panel where the leg folds into it. So that's a bit of a detraction, but again, that's also one's personal preference. However, I do like all the gold chrome that's all around him, especially on the bony plates that run all over his back. As according to the lore, these are his solar panels, so that works well with his function as a desert trooper. The more he's exposed to sunlight, the stronger he becomes. So this is one Stegosaurus you don't want to mess with on a hot sunny day. Now let's take a look at Snarl's loose parts, and he had about as many as would be expected from a Dinobot. Like for starters, we have his Energo sword. It's just a piece of red plastic, folks. It does bend a little easily, so you will want to check it over for signs of stress wear. Now, the disappointing thing is that on the original Diaclone dinosaur robots, their swords were chrome. Which, getting this one in red, it kind of harkens to a lightsaber from Star Wars, but I don't know. I think I would have liked the chrome look a little bit better, but hey, it still works. Next, we also have his gun, which is described as an electron cannon. It's got an interesting sight up here, and a foregrip down here, and a little cable hanging in the middle. Looks pretty good. Gun looks the same either side. No real differences on it. And we also have the rocket pod. Due to the wide nature of the post here on the bottom of it, the rocket pod is meant to be mounted on his shoulder, not held in his hand. Thing you will have to look out for, I'm not sure if this is just on my sample or if all of them are like this, but the trigger mechanism here on the missile launcher is stuck in the locked position, so it does not hold the missiles properly, so that's something you might want to watch out for, folks. Because, like I said, I don't know if all of them are like this after all these years, or if mine's just a broken one. Don't really know, but so I'll show you here. See, that's as far as the missile will go in. It won't go in all the way and be locked in, so you point it downwards and there goes the missile. Something you'll want to keep an eye out on. And then, of course, lastly, you have 3 of these mini black rockets. Only Swoop is the only other one that does not have chrome rockets. But, as you can tell, Snarls here are in black plastic, and Swoops will be in red plastic. And there we go. That's all of Snarl's pieces. Moving right along now with Snarl, we have his instruction manual right here. And first thing we notice is there's a bit overabundance of black here on the main body. It kind of drowns him out a little bit. I mean, I know they were doing this to save money on color costs and such, but this is just a little bit. It doesn't look right. And we slowly go through things on how to transform the Stegosaurus into the robot. And yeah, right here in the central area, they kind of go with a dark gray instead of the black that was predominant on the front of the instructions. And this is a little bit better. At least it still makes it somewhat easy to see the different segments of the body, so it's easier to make sure you're doing things right. And of course, lastly here, how to apply the stickers. And as you can see, he had a fair amount of stickers. Looks like he had about 17, going by the numbers here. And of course, here on the last page, we got the marking of the finding the rub sign, which as you saw is in between the scales on his back. You collect the robot points for Transformer mailaways, and how to read the tech spec. And of course, we're going to get to the tech spec here, but before I show you this tech spec, my brother wanted to contribute something other than Snarl to this video. He wanted to show you guys this one here. This is a European tech spec. I mean, I'm not a connoisseur of languages, but I do know one of these is Spanish, as I did take enough years of Spanish class to know it. One I would say is German, but I'm not entirely sure where the other two come from. So we're probably looking at maybe a Central European released figure, or at least in the case where this tech spec came from. And you can see, well, it's nice to have it in the different languages, and unfortunately means all you get is his function and his motto, and you get nothing else on the toy itself. And as you can see here on the picture, it has the chrome sword instead of the red sword. And another lacking feature on this tech spec grid is the lack of numbers on here, so it's kind of laying the decoder over it. Yeah, you can see the grid, but you really don't have a clue as to what does any of it really mean. Left in the dark here, folks. Getting back to this one. It's done up in red to signify he's an Autobot, and it claims he's a Dinobot. This would be the same picture that would be on the front of the box. It lists his name as Snarl and gives his function as Desert Warrior. Now, Desert Warrior is obviously somebody that is well-trained and or well-equipped to handle survival in this specific environment. In this case, the heat and humidity of a desert. Which is kind of interesting because I believe around the same time this figure was released here in the Transformers, the Hasbro's other toy line, G.I. Joe, also brought in their own Desert Warrior named Dusty. So, rather interesting that they did this close together to each other. Anyway, moving right along, Snarl's motto is, "Only in war is there happiness." An unhappy loner of few words and fewer opinions, finds joy only in battle, hates his Dinobot form, longs to return to Cybertron. Large golden plates on spinal assembly are solar collectors. Strength increases tenfold in sunlight. Tail can shatter 20-foot concrete cube. Armored hide resistant to most missiles. Vulnerable to nighttime attacks due to his weaker state. Slow, uncooperative nature hinders others from helping him. Now, this paints him in a different light than what many of us would be accustomed to from the cartoon series, as Snarl pretty much seemed to get along well with the other Dinobots. But in this, according to this here, it says that he hates his Dinobot form and wants to go to Cybertron, whereas the cartoon didn't seem to imply that his personality had ever been on Cybertron. So that would have been something interesting to explore. I mean, that was covered in some later episodes, such as many of them from the later seasons, where they incorporated in more of the combiner units. They showed other means of how the various Transformers were brought to life. So that would have probably been something to have explored, but may have been a little bit mature for us to have handled way back then. Anyways, before I ramble on and forget, let's get the grid up here. and lay the decoder over here, and let's take a look at Snarl's stats. It gives his strength as 9, his intelligence is 6, his speed is 3, his endurance is 9, his rank is 4, his courage is 8, his firepower is a dismal 1, and his skill is 4. So, yeah, quite a difference when you compare him to a lot of the other Transformers. He's got the strength and endurance, and certainly a fair amount of courage for it, but that lack of firepower and the very poor skill level shows that he is not that capable of a fighter. Now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Snarl? Snarl had the potential to be an interesting character if the writers would have developed him more. I mean, granted, since he was one of the later Dinobots to be brought into the toy line, that meant he suffered and had fewer appearances in the cartoon. But even when the focus shifted over more to Grimlock, his earlier buddies of Sludge and Slag seemed to be a little bit more developed than what Snarl was. It's kind of, Snarl was there simply to be filler, and that was it. They didn't really exploit his solar collection abilities, or if they did, it was very, very minimal and then immediately forgotten about. You know, you served your purpose, now we don't need you anymore. And that's really a shame, since, especially when you read his own backstory of that he wants to go back to Cybertron, he really doesn't want to be here on Earth, he hates becoming a dinosaur. It'd have been interesting to see how they would have how this would have developed. I think it's a potential story that should have been brought out more. The toy itself, it's okay. As far as the Dinobots go, it's okay. I mean, the biggest thing that's hindering the toy is age, because this is one of them that obviously, if it was played with a lot by a child, which is always a good thing, you want to know that a child did once have this toy and did love it enough to play with it, but as a result of that, as an adult collector, it does tend to suffer due to the fact that the transformation is kind of loose and wonky, so you have to be somewhat careful with how you handle him and display him, because he might come apart on you all of a sudden. So, in ways, I'm going to put Snarl in the middle tier. He's certainly not good enough for the top tier, especially with age. And then you also have to factor in all this gold chrome could easily rub off and wear off. I mean, I'm surprised this one's still in very good shape chrome-wise. It's a nice counter to the fact that he's very, very loose. But then you also factor in, I'm not sure about this missile launcher. Like I said, I'm not really a big fan of the red swords. I'd have preferred the original chrome. But there is enough potential there that he doesn't deserve to be down at the bottom, but he only just barely scrapes himself into the middle tier, folks. And that was my review of the Generation 1 Autobot Desert Warrior Snarl. If you liked the video, please thumbs up it here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button down below if you have not already. And please do share your thoughts in the comments below. Give me your feelings and thoughts on this Dinobot. This is Sparkster1701 reminding you all to enjoy your summer, and I will catch you all later.